Harper Ellington gave birth to premature triplets, and before she could even see their faces, her husband handed her divorce papers. 3 fragile cries echoed through the delivery room as doctors rushed each newborn into a separate incubator. Monitors sounded urgent warnings beneath the harsh fluorescent lights, while Harper lay exhausted, barely able to breathe after fighting to bring her children into the world. Then she saw Colton Hale standing at the foot of her bed. Her husband did not approach the babies. He did not ask whether Harper was safe. He simply threw a crumpled divorce petition onto her blanket. "I didn't agree to raise 3 children," he said coldly. "You handle them. I'm finished." Harper stared at him in disbelief. "Colton, they're your babies." He glanced toward the incubators without emotion. "You expect me to destroy my life for that?" "Not happening." A nurse tried to stop him, but Colton pushed her hand aside and walked toward the door. Harper reached after him, too weak to rise. "Please," she whispered, "don't abandon us." He never looked back. The door slammed, leaving Harper alone, homeless, and responsible for 3 premature babies whose lives remained uncertain. Her heart rate dropped as doctors surrounded her, and the machines erupted into alarms. Colton believed walking away had freed him from an unwanted family. He had no idea that abandoning Harper and the 3 children carrying his name would become the most devastating mistake of his life. And then, just as darkness pulled her under, a stranger stepped into the room. A tall man in a charcoal suit, eyes sharp with urgency, a folder clutched in his hand. "Harper Ellington?" he asked. "I've been searching for you. It's about your grandmother and your inheritance." Harper fainted before she could hear the truth, that her entire life was about to change. Harper Ellington had never belonged to the kind of world where people wore designer coats or lived in penthouses overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Her world was a small, drafty studio apartment in Newark, where the heater rattled louder than the traffic outside, and where she kept a plastic container under the sink because the pipes leaked every winter. She used to dream of better things, a career, stability, maybe even a small house with a backyard where kids could run barefoot in the summer. But life rarely matched dreams, and Harper learned early that wishing didn't pay bills. Before the triplets, before Colton's betrayal, Harper worked as a temporary receptionist at a mid-level insurance firm, a job people forgot she had the moment she stepped away from the desk. She answered phones, made coffee, and smiled, even when the managers dismissed her as the quiet girl who won't go far. Her pregnancy only made things worse. The day she told her supervisor she was expecting before she even knew it was triplets, he forced a polite smile and said, "Of course, congratulations," while sliding a termination form into a drawer. 2 weeks later, they no longer needed temporary staff. Harper cried in her aging Toyota in the company parking lot, clutching the box of her belongings, an old mug, a bent notebook, and a single photo she kept of her mother. She wiped her tears before driving home, because she didn't want Colton to see how broken she felt. But Colton already saw her as a burden. When they met 3 years earlier, he had seemed charming, ambitious, the kind of man who talked about building a future. Harper believed him. Back then, she wanted so desperately to be loved that she ignored the warning signs, the excessive drinking, the casual cruelty brushed off as jokes, the way he rolled his eyes when she talked about her day. But after she became pregnant, everything sharpened. The jokes became insults. The late nights became obvious affairs. The man she thought she married disappeared, replaced by someone colder than the winter air leaking through their apartment windows. And yet, Harper kept trying because she didn't want her children to grow up without a father, because she didn't want to fail at the one thing she had hoped for, family. But life had other plans. As the pregnancy progressed, her doctor whispered words that stole her breath. Triplets, 3 lives, 3 hearts beating inside her, 3 reasons to stay strong, and 3 reasons for Colton to walk away. From then on, everything became harder. She couldn't afford fresh groceries, so she learned to stretch canned soup into 2 meals. She sold her old MacBook to pay for prenatal vitamins. She hid the disconnect notices behind the fridge so Colton wouldn't yell. Her body ached constantly from carrying 3 babies, and she fainted twice walking up the stairs. But she kept going. She always kept going because she believed foolishly that love might still be enough. But the night she went into labor, collapsing against the kitchen counter as her water broke, Harper finally realized the truth. She was alone. Colton never intended to stay, and the world she tried so hard to build was never real. Now, as she lay in that cold hospital bed hours after giving birth, her heart fractured beyond recognition, She had no idea that everything she'd lost was about to be replaced by a life she never imagined belonged to her, and the man who walked into her hospital room would be the key to that impossible truth. The first time Harper Ellington saw Manhattan again, it didn't feel like a city. It felt like another planet. A sleek black SUV picked her up from the hospital 2 days after she gave birth. The triplets remained in the NICU, each barely bigger than her hand, each hooked to tubes and machines that hummed like distant thunder. Harper insisted on staying with them, but the hospital encouraged rest. "Just for a few hours," they said gently. She reluctantly agreed, not knowing her entire world was about to shift. The SUV glided through the gray morning traffic, tires whispering across the wet pavement. Harper stared out the window, clutching her thin hospital blanket around herself. She felt small against the towering skyline, the shimmering mirrors of glass and steel reflecting a life she never imagined touching. Then the car slowed and stopped before a building she had only seen in magazines, Ellington Global Holdings. The name gleamed across the front like a crown of polished silver. 72 stories of power rising into the clouds, its windows tinted dark, its marble lobby stretching wide enough to swallow entire neighborhoods like the one Harper lived in. She blinked, convinced there was a mistake. "This can't be for me." The driver merely opened her door. "Miss Ellington, they're expecting you." Inside, the lobby felt unreal. High ceilings soared above her, lit by chandeliers that sparkled like constellations. People in tailored suits walked briskly across marble floors. Women with Mont Blanc pens clipped to their blouses. Men clutching leather briefcases that cost more than Harper made in a month. The echo of her sneakers felt embarrassingly loud. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of her oversized hoodie and hospital admission bracelet still on her wrist. She had never felt more out of place. A receptionist looked up. Her smile froze. "Can I help you?" Harper opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Before she could speak, a familiar voice cut through the polished air. "Miss Ellington, right this way." Grayson Locke, the man from the hospital room, walked toward her with the calm certainty of someone who owned the ground he stepped on. His suit was sharp, charcoal with subtle pinstripes. His presence quieted the lobby like a subtle shift in gravity. He gestured to a private elevator. Harper hesitated. "Are you sure you have the right person?" His gaze softened, not pity, but recognition. "More sure than you think." The elevator doors slid shut, lifting them swiftly above the city. Harper's ears popped as floor numbers blinked by. "You didn't know your grandmother," Grayson said quietly, "but she spent years looking for you. She believes someone hid you from the Ellington family for a reason." Harper's pulse quickened. "I'm nobody," she whispered, but Grayson shook his head. "Harper, you're an Ellington, and everything your grandmother built, every tower, every investment, every asset belongs to you." The elevator chimed. The doors opened to a panoramic boardroom, floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking Fifth Avenue. The city sprawled out like a glittering map. A long marble table sat in the center, surrounded by stern faces and tailored suits. Harper stepped inside. Every head turned. Every expression said the same thing. "She doesn't belong here." And before Grayson could say a word, one board member stood and pointed accusingly. "That girl is an imposter." Harper froze, and the real battle for her inheritance began. Colton Hale had always been the kind of man who looked successful long before he ever earned success. He wore ambition like a tailored suit, sleek, polished, and designed to impress. But underneath the charm, beneath the smirk that fooled Harper for far too long, lived something far uglier. Hunger, the kind that devours everything in its path. Even before the triplets, Harper had sensed the shift. Colton became distant, irritable, always staring at his phone with a grin he never showed her anymore. Nights grew later, excuses multiplied. The scent of cheap perfume on his collar became so frequent that Harper stopped mentioning it. Every question she asked only earned the same response. "Don't be dramatic, Harper. No one likes a clingy wife." He knew exactly where to hit her, precisely the soft spots she spent her life trying to protect. But what Harper never knew, what she couldn't have imagined, was that Colton wasn't just cruel. He was calculating. Months before she gave birth, he'd already planted himself in the arms of a younger woman at his workplace, a 2-3-year-old intern named Brinley, who saw Colton as a stepping stone to a glamorous life. Together, they whispered plans of a future free from responsibility, free from Harper, and especially free from those 3 kids she should have never gotten pregnant with. Harper had been replaced long before the contractions began. The night before she went into labor, Colton had been out celebrating with Brinley at a rooftop lounge in Hoboken. He'd held her waist with the same hand that used to cradle Harper's cheek. He'd ordered champagne with Harper's last savings, and Brinley had giggled into his ear, asking when he'd finally leave the charity case. Colton promised, soon. She won't survive without me anyway. He wasn't planning to stay. He was planning to escape. So, when Harper collapsed during labor, blood rushing, vision fading, Colton wasn't terrified. He was annoyed. The timing wasn't convenient. The babies weren't convenient. Harper's tears weren't convenient. His exit from the delivery room wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a strategy. But the universe has a memory, and karma doesn't forget names. The morning after he abandoned Harper and the newborns, Colton woke in Brinley's apartment, sunlight streaking across sheets that weren't his. His phone buzzed nonstop, missed calls, messages, hospital alerts. He silenced them all. He wasn't going back. Instead, he strolled into work, proudly announcing over coffee that he was finally free to live. His coworkers stared in stunned silence as Colton bragged about being smart enough to get out before the kids trapped him. But later that week, something else circulated through his office. A leaked headline. Billionaire Heiress finally located billion-dollar empire to be transferred. A grainy photo accompanied the article. Harper, his wife, the woman he had just abandoned. Colton's coffee cup slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. Harris? He whispered, panic clawing up his throat. Billion what? Brinley looked at him, horrified. You didn't tell me she was rich. Colton's world collapsed in a single breath. All the arrogance vanished. All the cruelty backfired. He wasn't free. He'd walked away from the greatest prize of his life. And now, Colton Hale wanted one thing, to crawl back into Harper's world before she realized she never needed him. Harper had always believed the worst pain was the moment Colton walked out of the delivery room. She was wrong. The real humiliation came 3 days later when she was discharged briefly to rest. Grayson had arranged temporary transportation and insisted on reviewing paperwork with her at a quiet cafe across from the hospital. Harper sat hunched in her oversized coat, her hospital bracelet still on, staring anxiously at her phone in case the NICU called. But, across town, Colton Hale was performing. At the insurance company where he and Brinley worked, they were hosting a quarterly luncheon, an event Colton had begged Harper to attend months earlier. She'd spent 2 days sewing the hem of a thrifted dress, only for him to tell her the event was employees only at the last minute. Now, with Harper bedridden and alone, he strutted into the venue with Brinley on his arm, her red dress shimmering like a challenge. Colton wore a smug grin, the kind that came naturally to a man who believed he'd escaped responsibility. Coworkers whispered. Didn't his wife just give birth? Triplets, right? And he's here? Colton basked in the attention, proudly placing his hand on Brinley's waist. What can I say? He announced loudly. I chose happiness. I'm not meant for diapers and bills. Harper will manage. She always does. Harper didn't know a single detail about this luncheon, but fate had a cruel sense of timing. As Colton raised a glass for a self-congratulatory toast, a large TV screen in the venue lit up with breaking news from a major Manhattan network. The sound was muted, but the headline was unmistakable. Missing Billionaire Heiress found billion-dollar fortune transferring to sole surviving descendant, and beneath it, a photo of Harper being wheeled into the NICU, exhausted but alive. Colton froze mid-toast. The room fell silent. Someone whispered, Isn't that your wife? Brinley's face drained of color. You told me she was broke, she hissed. Colton felt the ground tilt beneath him. He scrambled for his phone, scrolling through the announcement. His breath quickened. Billion-dollar empire. Solaris. Harper Ellington. It couldn't be. It shouldn't be. He had married a nobody, so how? His chest tightened as he realized the catastrophic truth. He had abandoned the woman who owned more than he could imagine. Back at the cafe, Harper remained oblivious. She sat stiffly across from Grayson, sipping water while he explained fragments about the Ellington estate. But her mind stayed on her babies, on their fragile lungs, their tiny fingers curling around tubes instead of her hand. She didn't feel rich. She didn't feel powerful. She felt like a failure. Then her phone buzzed. Dozens of missed calls, all from Colton. Her heart dropped. She whispered, Why would he call me now? Grayson's expression hardened, his voice low and steady. Because, Harper, some people only return when they think you finally have value. Harper stared at the screen, tears blurring the numbers. She didn't answer, but she knew Colton Hale wasn't finished with her. The NICU was a world of beeping machines, soft blue lights, and whispered prayers. Harper stood between the 3 incubators, her hands trembling as she pressed her forehead against the plastic barrier separating her from her children. Each baby fought a quiet, desperate battle, tiny chests rising and falling with the help of machines far too large for their bodies. She whispered their names, the ones she'd chosen alone: Liam, Audia, Miles. They were perfect in ways that broke her heart. But every day, the weight of reality grew heavier. Medical bills stacked like falling dominoes. The nurses' sympathetic looks cut deeper than scalpels, and Colton's sudden flood of phone calls only added poison to her bloodstream. He hadn't asked about the babies, not once. He only left voicemail after voicemail filled with frantic questions. When can we talk? Harper, call me back now. We can work this out. Work what out? He had walked away. He had chosen another woman. He had left her to bleed alone. But the world didn't pause for her grief. On the 4th day, after 20 hours without sleep, Harper collapsed in the hallway outside the NICU. A nurse caught her just before she hit the floor. You need rest, Miss Ellington. You can't pour from an empty cup. Harper wanted to scream. She didn't have a cup. She was running on fumes, on fear, on the thin thread of determination that her babies deserved a mother who didn't break. But she was breaking. Later that night, she sat in the family waiting room, staring blankly at a vending machine dinner. Her phone buzzed with another voicemail from Colton. Another reminder that the storm wasn't over. She pressed play. His voice slithered through the speaker. Harper, baby, you're being dramatic. I didn't mean to leave you like that. I was overwhelmed. She clenched her jaw. The lie was so easy for him. Then came the hook. I heard you're coming into some money. Let's talk. I think we can fix our marriage. Her stomach twisted. There it was. Not remorse. Opportunity. Not love. Greed. Harper covered her mouth as a sob escaped. She hated crying. It made her feel small, invisible, like the people who looked down on her were right. She curled into the hospital chair, hugging her knees, wishing the world would stop spinning. That's when Grayson Locke appeared in the doorway. Sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, his expression softer than she had ever seen. You shouldn't be alone tonight, he said quietly. Harper wiped her face with the back of her sleeve. I don't want anyone to see me like this. Grayson crouched beside her, his voice steady, grounded. People drown in silence, Harper. Let someone throw you a rope. His words shattered something inside her, not in a painful way, but in a way that reminded her she was still human, still allowed to feel. But before she could speak, her phone buzzed again. This time, a text from an unknown number. We need to talk about the inheritance. Someone else is claiming to be the Ellington heir. Harper stared at the message, her pulse pounding. As if she didn't have enough battles, now someone was trying to steal her identity. Harper stared at the unknown message glowing on her cracked phone screen. Someone else is claiming to be the Ellington heir. Her breath caught. She already felt like an imposter in a world understand. Now someone else was trying to replace her entirely. Before panic could swallow her, Grayson gently took the phone from her trembling hands. His expression darkened as he read the message, the muscle in his jaw tightening. This is what I was afraid of, he murmured. What do you mean? Harper's voice cracked, exhaustion slurring her words. He hesitated only for a moment. Your grandmother suspected that the board would fight her decision. They never wanted her assets to go to a missing granddaughter they couldn't control. Someone is taking advantage of that fear. Harper shook her head. But I don't even know her. I don't know any of them. Why would they care? Grayson looked at her with something like pity. Because the Ellington empire isn't just money, it's influence, it's power. Whoever controls it controls half of Manhattan's business pipeline. Her stomach twisted. She felt sick, not from childbirth, not from exhaustion, but from the terrifying realization that her life wasn't just changing, it was under attack. Grayson helped her to her feet. We need to go to the Ellington archives. Now, before whoever is pretending to be you gets further. Harper didn't feel strong enough to walk, let alone confront a billion-dollar conspiracy. But something in Grayson's voice steadied her, an anchor in the chaos. They left the hospital through a back entrance to avoid reporters already gathering outside. Harper kept her hood over her head, her body still weak from surgery. Every step throbbed, Every breath felt sharp. The SUV drove them to a private entrance beneath the Ellington building. A steel door opened with a fingerprint scanner, revealing a long corridor lined with portraits of Ellington family members, people Harper had never known. She was a ghost walking through her own lineage. Inside the archives room, a woman in a navy suit stood waiting. Her name was Miranda Shaw, senior legal counsel. She held a thin envelope bound with red string. "Miss Ellington," Miranda said softly, "I've been safeguarding this until the rightful heir arrived." "Are you sure I'm the rightful one?" Harper's voice trembled. "Because someone else seems very sure." Miranda exchanged a grim look with Grayson. "They're forging documents. They have a fabricated birth certificate and a fabricated DNA test, and the board is panicking. Some of them want to believe it because, frankly, they don't want you." Harper's chest tightened. She wasn't wanted by Colton. She wasn't wanted by her job. And now she wasn't wanted by her own bloodline. Miranda opened the envelope. Inside lay a single item, a sealed envelope handwritten by Eleanor Ellington herself. "To my granddaughter, Harper." Harper's legs nearly buckled. Grayson caught her elbow. "Open it," he whispered. With trembling hands, Harper broke the seal. Inside were three things: a signed succession letter naming her the next head of Ellington Global, a photo of Eleanor holding Harper as a baby, and a handwritten note. "They will doubt you, but you are mine, and one day you will rise where they tried to bury you." Harper felt tears spill down her cheeks. This wasn't just proof, it was a promise. But before she could breathe, Miranda's phone rang. She paled. "They've brought the impersonator to the boardroom. They're moving to vote immediately." Grayson's eyes sharpened with fire. "Harper, we need to move now. Because if they didn't, her stolen destiny would be signed away forever." The ride back to the executive floors of Ellington Global felt like a countdown to war. Harper clutched Eleanor's letter against her chest, the ink still faintly smelling of age, and something softer, lavender, maybe. A scent of a grandmother she never knew, a life she never lived. Grayson walked beside her with long, purposeful strides, radiating the kind of authority that made people step aside instinctively. His phone buzzed non-stop legal updates, board alerts, messages from executives panicking about the sudden second heir. But he ignored them all. His attention never drifted far from Harper. "Whatever happens in that room," Grayson said as they approached the private elevator, "do not doubt who you are. They're counting on you being too scared to fight back." Harper swallowed hard. "I am scared." "I know," he said gently, "but you're also an Ellington. Fear doesn't disqualify you. Quitting does." When the elevator doors opened on the 72nd floor, chaos erupted instantly. Reporters were already gathering behind security ropes. Cameras flashed. People shouted questions. "Are you the real heir? Did your grandmother hide you? Is it true you were living in poverty?" Harper felt her knees wobble. Grayson stepped in front of her, shielding her with the ease of someone used to protecting valuable assets. Except this felt personal. "Clear the hallway," he barked to security. "Now." They moved. Instantly, inside the boardroom, tension crackled like a live wire. 13 board members sat at the long marble table, their faces stiff with suspicion. And at the far end of the table stood her, the impersonator, a woman in her late 20s with striking features, perfectly curled hair, and a tailored ivory suit. She offered a polite smile, but her eyes glittered with calculation. "There she is," the woman said smoothly, "the girl claiming to be Harper Ellington. How convenient." Harper's heart clenched. Why did this stranger wear confidence so easily while she struggled just to breathe? Board member Sterling, thin, silver-haired, with eyes sharp enough to cut glass, stood abruptly. "This meeting is underway. We've already reviewed documentation provided by Miss Lillian Hart." He gestured toward the impersonator. "Her DNA test and birth records appear legitimate." Harper opened her mouth, but Sterling silenced her with a raised hand. "You have no standing here." Grayson stepped forward like a storm unleashed. "She has every standing here." The room froze. Sterling narrowed his eyes. "And you are dangerously out of line, Mr. Locke." Grayson didn't flinch. "I've reviewed Lillian's documents. They're forgeries." He placed Eleanor's letter on the table. "This is Eleanor Ellington's final directive, naming her granddaughter Harper as heir." The board members murmured, startled. Lillian's smile slipped. "That could have been written by anyone." "Except it comes with a biometric seal," Grayson interrupted. one only Eleanor herself could produce, and Harper's photo with Eleanor is time-stamped and verified. Miranda, the legal counsel, entered behind them with a folder. We also discovered the lab Lillian used for her DNA test. It belongs to a company owned by Tolt. She dropped the papers on the table. Board member Sterling. A collective gasp rippled across the room. Sterling's face went pale. Harper stared, stunned. Grayson took advantage of the silence. Before any votes are cast, the rightful heir deserves to speak. He turned to Harper, voice softening. This is your moment. Harper's throat tightened. She stepped forward, palms sweating, heart pounding, every eye locked on her. Every whisper died. But just as she opened her mouth, the boardroom doors slammed open. Colton Hale stumbled inside, breathless, eyes wild. "Harper," he shouted. "Baby, we need to talk now." And the room erupted into chaos. Chaos tore through the boardroom the moment Colton Hale burst through the doors. His hair was messy, his shirt half-tucked, and desperation clung to him like cheap cologne. He looked nothing like the confident man who'd abandoned Harper in a delivery room. This version of him was frantic, sweaty, cornered. "Harper," he gasped, stumbling toward her. "Baby, please listen to me." Gasps rippled through the executives. Lillian Hart stared at him in disgust. Sterling cursed under his breath. Harper froze. For a split second, she saw the man she'd once loved, the one she'd hoped might show up for their children. But that illusion shattered when Colton reached for her arm, gripping too tight. Grayson moved instantly. "Take your hand off her," he growled, stepping between them. Colton's wild eyes flicked to Grayson, full of panic and envy. "So this is him? The guy filling my spot while I was dealing with everything?" Harper's voice was flat. "You walked away." Colton's jaw twitched. "I didn't walk away. I freaked out. Triplets with no money? Anyone would panic." Several board members exchanged disgusted glances. Then Colton made the fatal mistake. He straightened his shoulders and announced loudly, "And now I hear my wife is inheriting a billion-dollar empire." "Harper, we're still married. I deserve..." "Deserve?" Harper repeated softly. The word tasted like poison on her tongue. He pushed on, oblivious to the room turning against him. "I deserve to be part of this. To help you. To help raise our kids. We can make this work. We can be a power couple. Think of the opportunities." There it was. Not love, not remorse, just greed. The final crack in Harper's heart sealed shut. She stepped away from him, lifting her chin with a resolve she didn't know she had. "Colton, the only thing you ever cared about was what I could give you. Not once did you ask if I was okay. Not once did you look at our children." Colton sputtered. I was overwhelmed." Harper didn't flinch. "I was giving birth to 3 premature babies alone. I was overwhelmed too, but I didn't run." Silence strangled the room. For the first time, Harper felt every pair of eyes not judging her, but waiting for her, listening to her. She exhaled shakily and turned to the board. "If I'm going to stand in my grandmother's place, then I need to start acting like someone worthy of her name." She placed Eleanor's letter on the table. "This is my birthright. I won't let anyone steal it. Not Lillian, not Sterling, and not the man who abandoned me." Colton roared. "Harper, you can't do this to me." Grayson stepped closer, voice icy. "She's not doing anything to you. She's simply refusing to let you keep hurting her." Security guards appeared at the doorway. Harper looked Colton in the eye one final time. "You don't get to return now that things look profitable. You made your choice when you left that hospital." Colton lunged forward, but 2 guards grabbed him, dragging him back as he screamed her name. "Harper, you'll regret this. I'm your husband. Those kids are mine." Harper didn't move, didn't cry, didn't break. She simply whispered, soft but lethal, "You lost us the moment you walked out." And for the first time in her life, the boardroom applauded. Colton Hale was not a man accustomed to losing, and he certainly wasn't accustomed to being thrown out of in front of Manhattan's elite. Yet, 2 security guards dragged him through the marble hallway of Ellington Global as he kicked, cursed, and shouted Harper's name like a deranged echo. But humiliation wasn't enough to stop him. His greed was stronger than his dignity. The next morning, Harper walked into the NICU expecting a quiet moment with her children. Instead, she froze at the sight of Colton, already standing there, leaning over the incubators as if he had any right. A nurse hovered nearby, stiff with unease. "He insisted on seeing them," she whispered apologetically. Harper's heart clenched. Colton turned, pretending surprise. "Harper," he breathed, his voice suddenly soft, rehearsed. "Look at them. Our babies. I needed to see them. I panicked before, but I'm here now." His eyes glistened with crocodile tears. He even placed a hand over his chest, the in him fully awakened. Harper didn't move. The only thing she felt was a cold, sharp ache in her spine. "They're beautiful." He continued stepping closer. "And I want to be their father, a real father. We can start again. Forget the past." Behind him, the monitors beeped steadily, reminding Harper of the night she delivered them alone while he walked out without glancing back. Grayson arrived at that moment, silent but solid as a wall. Colton's jaw tightened. "Oh, look," he sneered, shedding his false tenderness instantly. "The babysitter CEO. You following her around now?" Grayson didn't flinch. "I'm here to protect her and her children from predators." Colton lunged forward. "I am their father." Harper stepped between them. "Fatherhood is more than DNA," she said quietly, "and you've shown absolutely nothing of it." Her voice didn't shake, not this time. Colton scoffed. "You think you're so righteous now that you're rich, Harper? Be serious. You need me. You don't know how to handle money, business, people, any of this." Harper straightened. For the first time, she felt her grandmother's legacy in her blood. Quiet, deliberate strength. "I handled everything alone when you ran," she said. "I'll handle this too." A NICU doctor approached, irritation sharp in her voice. "Mr. Hale, unless you're here to support the mother, I need you to leave. Stress can affect the babies." Colton laughed bitterly. "What? Are you all against me now? Is that it? I'm the bad guy?" No one answered. That silence was louder than any argument. As security arrived, Colton made one last attempt. He pointed at Harper, finger trembling with fury. "You can't erase me. I'm still her husband, and legally I have rights too." Grayson stepped forward, eyes cold. "No, you don't." He handed the guard a document. Colton snatched it, then his face drained of color. A separation order, filed early that morning, signed by Harper, approved by a Judge Grayson personally contacted at dawn. Colton looked up, betrayed, furious, terrified. You did this to me?" Harper exhaled slowly. "No, you did this to yourself." Security escorted him out as he shouted empty threats down the hallway. But for the first time, Harper didn't feel afraid. She felt free. Harper had spent most of her life walking into rooms hoping not to be noticed. Now she was walking into rooms where every breath she took was analyzed, judged, measured. Ellington Global was a world built on sharp lines, sharper people, and ambitions sharpest of all. Yet for the first time since stepping foot in the skyscraper, Harper didn't shrink. She didn't hunch her shoulders or glance toward the floor. She walked with purpose. Grayson kept a respectful distance beside her, not leading, not overshadowing, but quietly anchoring her. As they stepped into the executive suite, heads turned, whispers rose like smoke. "That's her. The real heir? She doesn't look like. She survived triplets, born premature. She's stronger than she looks." Harper felt heat rush to her cheeks, but she didn't falter. Today, she was meeting the departments she now technically owned. Finance, development, operations, media, 4 divisions so massive she could barely comprehend them, yet they were hers to lead. The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, a stunning space lined with wall-to-wall windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. A long glass corridor connected multiple departments like arteries of a living, breathing empire. Harper swallowed. Her grandmother had walked these halls. Now she walked them alone. Inside the first conference room, dozens of department heads sat waiting. Their perfectly tailored suits contrasted sharply against Harper's simple blouse and borrowed blazer, but she refused to shrink under their scrutiny. Grayson took a seat at the side, not the head of the table, leaving that space open for her. Harper hesitated only a moment before claiming it. "You're an Ellington." Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. The meeting began stiffly. Questions were sharp, comments were pointed. Some spoke to her like she was a child. Some ignored her entirely, directing questions to Grayson instead. But Harper didn't crumble. Not after everything she had survived. When the CFO dismissed her concerns with a patronizing smirk, "Well, Miss Ellington, mergers aren't exactly something you can learn overnight." Harper met his gaze steadily. Neither is surviving a NICU crisis, she replied. But I learned that too. The room went still. The CFO blinked, stunned. Grayson's lips twitched, almost a smile. Harper continued, her voice gaining strength. My grandmother trusted me with this company, not because I knew everything, but because she believed I could lead people who do. There was a shift in the air, subtle, but real. Respect, at least from some, not all. Halfway through the meeting, Miranda entered abruptly, handing Harper a folder thick with documents. Miss Ellington, these are the forged claims submitted by Miss Lillian Hart. Gasps spread across the table. Lillian's name was already circulating as the fraud attempting to steal the empire. Harper straightened. Thank you, she said softly. Then, addressing the room, from this moment, Ellington Global will not tolerate corruption in or around our board. A bold statement, one her grandmother would have approved. Then, as if the universe wanted to test her newfound courage, her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. If you think Lillian was the only threat, you're wrong. Someone inside Ellington wants you gone. Harper's pulse quickened. Her fingers tightened around the folder, but she did not show fear. Not anymore. She lifted her chin and continued the meeting as if nothing had happened. Because for the first time, Harper Ellington wasn't surviving the storm. She was preparing to fight it. Harper Ellington had expected resistance. She had expected judgment, but she had not expected an organized attack. The moment the mysterious text appeared, someone inside Ellington wants you gone. A cold chill settled over her spine. She tucked her phone away before anyone noticed, forcing herself to return to the stack of documents in front of her. She couldn't afford to look shaken, not in a room full of executives waiting for her to fail. After the meeting ended, Grayson approached quietly. You handled them well, he said, but be careful. People show their true colors when power is shifting. Harper nodded, though her mind raced. Do you think someone on the board sent that message? Grayson didn't answer immediately, a silence that said more than words. There are members who would rather see Ellington Global dissolve than fall into the hands of someone they can't manipulate. Harper's stomach tightened. She had no experience in business. No allies except Grayson, Miranda, and a few staff members who offered tentative smiles. She was stepping into an empire ruled by sharks while still healing from childbirth, still exhausted, still visiting the NICU twice a day. She was vulnerable, and someone knew it. The first act of sabotage came faster than expected. Later that afternoon, Harper entered the financial compliance office to review records tied to Lillian's forged documents. The manager, a severe man with neatly parted gray hair, greeted her with a strained smile. Miss Ellington, an honor. The tone was polite. The eyes were not. He slid a stack of reports toward her. You requested the audit files. Harper reached for them, but the moment she touched the folder, the manager pulled a second document from beneath his desk. However, he said loudly enough for everyone in the office to hear, we've discovered something disturbing. He held up a printed email thread complete with Harper's name, her supposed signature, and a message that read, proceed with transferring Ellington assets into personal trust. Do not inform board. Her heart slammed against her ribs. That's not mine. I never. The manager leaned back. Forgery or not, these instructions went through our internal system using your ID credentials. Employees whispered. Eyes narrowed. Someone pulled out a phone. Harper felt the room tightening around her like a noose. She could already imagine the headlines. Newly found heiress caught embezzling company funds. Her voice trembled. I didn't do this. I don't even know how to access those systems. The manager folded his arms. How convenient. Before Harper could respond, Grayson strode into the room, his presence slicing through the tension. He took the document, scanned it, and laughed cold and sharp. Your forgery team is sloppy, he said. Harper uses her middle initial in every legal signature. This one doesn't, and the timestamp shows it was filed while she was in the NICU. Silence dropped like a stone. The manager flushed. I was only following procedure. No, Grayson snapped. You were participating in a smear campaign. He turned to Harper. Come with me. As they walked out, she whispered, if they can fake emails, what else can they do? Grayson looked at her with a seriousness that made her chest tighten. They're testing how far they can push you. And they won't stop. Harper's hands shook. Her throat burned. She felt small again, like the world was too big, too cruel, too loud, but then she remembered something. Her babies were fighting for their lives every second. She couldn't afford to fall apart. She lifted her chin. Then we pushed back harder. Grayson studied her, a flicker of admiration breaking through his controlled demeanor. That's exactly what your grandmother would have said. But before he could say more, Miranda burst from the elevator breathless. They've called an emergency board meeting, she said. Someone submitted a motion to remove you from airship. Harper exhaled shakily. Of course they had. Her war had officially begun. Grayson Locke had always been controlled, strategic, and unshakably calm. But that calm broke the moment Miranda announced the emergency board meeting to remove Harper as heir. Someone wasn't just sabotaging her. They were accelerating the destruction, and they were getting better at it. Grayson's instincts sharpened. He'd spent years navigating corporate betrayals, but this was different. This was personal, not because Harper was the rightful heir, but because of the way she tried to hide her trembling hands, the way she carried her pain quietly, like someone used to suffering alone. He wasn't going to let them destroy her. Instead of taking Harper to the boardroom, Grayson led her into his private office, a fortress of dark wood, glass walls, and quiet power. He shut the door and immediately pulled up a secure server on his laptop. Harper blinked. I thought we needed to get to the meeting. We will, he said, but not unarmed. She frowned. What are you doing? Grayson's fingers flew across the keyboard, finding who forged those emails. Within minutes, lines of encrypted code filled the screen. Harper couldn't make sense of any of it, but she understood one thing. Grayson wasn't just a CEO. He was dangerous when he needed to be. He finally leaned back. Found it. Already? He nodded. They to mask the IP address using a proxy. Amateur work. Harper's pulse raced. So, who did it? Grayson turned the laptop toward her. The name on the screen nearly made her collapse. Colton Hale. Harper stared at the glowing letters, her breath snagging in her throat. No, he wouldn't. Grayson's voice was steady, but ice cold. He did. The files didn't lie. Forged emails, fake asset transfers, a template for digital signatures, and a trail of messages between Colton and an anonymous partner inside Ellington Global. Harper's chest tightened painfully. She had known Colton was selfish. She had known he only crawled back because of the inheritance. But this level of malice was something she couldn't comprehend. He's not alone, Grayson continued. Look at this. He pulled up a payment trail, thousands of dollars transferred from a hidden account connected to Colton, straight to board member Sterling, the same Sterling who tried to silence Harper, the same man tied to Lillian's forged DNA test, the same man calling the emergency meeting. Harper pressed a shaking hand to her forehead. Why? Why would Sterling help him? Grayson folded his arms. Because if the board removes you, Sterling becomes acting controller of the Ellington Trust. And Colton gets access to your assets through you. The room spun. Harper gripped the edge of the desk. So, they plan to take everything? Everything. Grayson confirmed, including custody leverage. They needed you powerless before the babies came home. Harper felt sick. A cold, hollow ache spread through her chest. Her children, her tiny fighters, were part of their scheme. They would have used them, weaponized them, stolen them. Tears blurred her vision. How could he do this to his own children? Grayson lowered his gaze. He doesn't see them as children. He sees them as assets. Harper covered her mouth, desperately trying not to break. But Grayson stepped closer, not touching her, but grounding her with his presence. You're not alone in this anymore, he said quietly. We fight back. Before Harper could respond, Miranda burst into the office, pale as paper. They just locked you out of the boardroom, she said breathlessly. Sterling is holding the vote without you present. Harper's spine straightened. Her grief crystallized into something sharper, something stronger. They want a war? She whispered. Then we give them one. Harper Ellington had spent most of her life apologizing for taking up space. Now she was about to take back a boardroom that was legally and rightfully hers. Sterling thought she would crumble. He thought locking the doors would shame her into retreat. He didn't understand the woman who had survived a hospital bed, a failing body, and a man who left her to give birth alone. He had underestimated the wrong Ellington. Miranda, can we override access? Grayson asked, striding toward the security console outside the boardroom. Miranda shook her head sharply. They engaged an executive block. Only a voting member can open it from the inside. So Sterling locked himself in with his puppets, Grayson muttered. Coward. Harper pressed her palms against the cool glass wall, staring at the silhouettes inside. She could see them sitting, talking, shifting nervously, already deciding her fate without her. Her chest tightened, not with fear, with fury. She turned suddenly. If I can't get in through the door, then I want the entire company to hear what Sterling is doing. Miranda blinked. How? Grayson gave a slow, dangerous smile. Through the internal broadcast system. Harper exhaled as the idea took shape. If they wanted secrecy, she would give them visibility. 5 minutes later, she stood in the communications hub, a sleek room lined with screens showing dozens of live company feeds. Technicians scrambled to clear the space when Grayson flashed his CEO credentials. Patch her into every office, he ordered, every conference room, and especially the boardroom. Harper felt her pulse hammering, but she lifted her chin. You sure this is allowed? Grayson met her eyes. When they break the rules, you don't win by following them. The lead technician nodded. You're live in 30 seconds, Miss Ellington. Harper swallowed hard. Her grandmother's letter felt warm in her pocket. She wasn't just fighting for a fortune. She was fighting for her name, for her children, for her life. The red light blinked on. She inhaled. Good afternoon, Ellington Global. Her voice echoed through every floor of the skyscraper. This is Harper Ellington. The building froze. Employees dropped pens, swiveled in chairs, stared up at screens. I'm speaking to you because certain members of the board have attempted to remove me without due process, she continued. They have locked me out of the meeting in violation of Ellington bylaws. In the boardroom, Sterling jolted to his feet. What is this? Turn that off. But they couldn't. Harper's voice filled the room through embedded speakers. I want you to know the truth, she said steadily. Forged documents were submitted to challenge my identity. Fake emails were entered into the compliance system. These actions were coordinated by someone working with outside parties who want the Ellington Trust for themselves. A pause, a breath, and I have proof. Gasps echoed across every floor. Inside the boardroom, Sterling's face drained of color. Harper continued, her voice gaining strength with every word. My grandmother believed in integrity. She believed this company should be led by someone who values transparency. Today, I honor her by choosing to speak openly, unlike certain board members hiding behind closed doors. Sterling lunged toward the speaker system. Shut her up, but another board member grabbed his arm. Sterling, what exactly did you do? He stiffened. His mask was cracking. Grayson stepped beside Harper, speaking loud enough for the building to hear. Sterling's accomplice is Colton Hale, Harper's estranged husband. Together, they forged documents to steal control of Ellington Global. The uproar was immediate. Shock, outrage, disbelief. Harper lifted her chin. I'll join the board meeting shortly with attorneys and evidence. But until then, I want everyone in this company to know one thing. Her voice dropped into something steady, powerful, unshakable. I am not going anywhere. And the era of corruption in Ellington Global ends today. The broadcast cut. Harper exhaled, and the building erupted, not in chaos, but in applause. The Ellington Annual Charity Gala at the Plaza Hotel was typically a night of diamonds, champagne, and whispered alliances. Tonight, it would become the battleground where Harper Ellington reclaimed everything stolen from her. The golden chandeliers glittered like constellations as Manhattan's elite poured into the ballroom. Politicians, CEOs, media moguls, old money families whose surnames decorated museums. Reporters swarmed the red carpet desperate for a headline, and they got one, because the moment Harper stepped out of the black SUV, the entire entrance fell silent. She looked nothing like the fragile girl who once cried alone in a hospital hallway. Tonight, she wore a fitted obsidian gown that hugged her waist, her hair swept into a loose, elegant chignon. A single diamond drop earring, a piece from her grandmother's collection, glimmered against her neck. But it wasn't the dress that stunned people. It was the expression. Calm, steady, powerful. Grayson Locke stepped out behind her, offering his arm not as a savior, but as an equal. Ready? He murmured. She inhaled deeply, as I'll ever be. The press erupted. Harper, is it true you're the heir? Are allegations of fraud real? Is the board trying to remove you? Is this your new partner? Harper didn't answer, but the soft smile she gave was enough to send social media into a frenzy. Inside the ballroom, Sterling stood near the stage with several board members clustered around him. His face tightened the moment he saw her. He had expected her to crumble, to hide, to retreat. He didn't expect her to rise. Across the room, Lillian Hart, still clinging to her forged identity, watched Harper with a glare sharp enough to cut glass. She stood beside Sterling, their alliance now painfully obvious. But someone else appeared in the crowd, someone Harper hoped never to see again tonight, Colton Hale. He wore an ill-fitting suit and a strained smile, but his eyes glittered with desperation. He shoved through guests until he reached them. "Harper," he breathed. "You look incredible. Can we talk?" She didn't break stride. "Security," Grayson said calmly. 2 guards intercepted Colton, but he struggled. "Harper, you can't ignore me. I'm your husband. We should be entering together." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Harper finally turned. "In what world," she said evenly, "does abandoning your wife during childbirth make you a partner worthy of standing beside her?" Colton froze, humiliated under the plaza's crystal chandeliers. Harper stepped past him, her voice low enough for only him to hear. "You walked out before holding your children. Now you'll watch me walk into the life you tried to steal." The room shifted as Harper approached the stage. Conversations halted. Glasses paused midair. Even the orchestra quieted as she stood before Her voice was soft, but carried effortlessly through the ballroom. "This year's gala is dedicated to integrity, something Ellington Global was built upon." Sterling stiffened. Lillian's smile twitched. Harper continued. "Some have attempted to distort that legacy, to exploit it, to steal it." Shocked murmurs flared. She held up a folder. "These documents expose orchestrated fraud from forged DNA tests to fabricated emails carried out by individuals inside this company." Grayson stepped beside her, placing additional evidence onto the podium. "And tonight," Harper said, lifting her chin, "every lie ends." Across the room, Sterling's face drained of color. Lillian stumbled back a step. Colton froze like a man standing on the edge of a cliff. Harper Ellington had just declared war, and she was winning. The ballroom had already grown tense after Harper's reveal, but nothing compared to the moment Grayson stepped forward with a remote in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "before we proceed with tonight's donations, Ellington Global has one more matter to address." Sterling stiffened. Lillian's knuckles whitened around her champagne flute. Colton swallowed hard, sensing something was about to blow apart violently. Grayson pressed a button. The massive LED screen behind the stage flickered. Then a video began to play. At first, the footage was grainy. Security camera timestamp blinking in the corner. Then voices emerged clear, incriminating, unmistakable. Colton's voice and Sterling's. "Colton, if Harper thinks she's getting the inheritance, she's delusional. Once she's removed, the board signs everything over. You get your share, I get mine." Sterling, "We only need to frame her for embezzlement. The forged emails are ready." Colton, "Good. And after that, I'll sue for custody. Once I have the kids, her trust becomes accessible." Gasps exploded across the ballroom. People covered their mouths, staring in horror. Even those who didn't support Harper looked sick. But the next line detonated the entire room. "Colton, the babies don't matter. They're leverage, nothing more." Harper felt something inside her crack, not with sadness, but with a righteous, blazing fury she didn't know she was capable of. Across the ballroom, Colton's face drained of color. He surged forward, pointing at the screen as if yelling loud enough might erase the evidence. "This is edited. It's fake. Turn it off." But Grayson's voice cut through his panic with lethal calm. The footage came from Sterling's private office servers, the same servers used to forge Harper's documents. The room erupted into shouting. Board members stood, faces pale. Lillian backed away like the ground was collapsing. Sterling lunged for the exit, only to be intercepted by 2 uniformed officers who had quietly entered minutes earlier. Miranda stepped to the microphone. "For the record, both men are under investigation for fraud, identity manipulation, corporate sabotage, and conspiracy to kidnap minors." Colton's knees gave out. He hit the floor in front of 1,000 horrified witnesses. This was the moment Harper had been denied years ago. Justice, delivered publicly and undeniably. Security approached Colton, but he stumbled to his feet, desperate, frantic. "Harper," he screamed across the room. "Tell them this isn't true. Tell them I love you." I'm the father of your children. Harper stepped forward, calm and unshakable. Yes, she said softly. You are their biological father. Colton's shoulders sagged, relief flickering in his eyes. But Harper wasn't finished. She stepped closer, her words quiet but lethal. And that is the only title you will ever hold. Gasps rippled through the crowd again. Harper continued, voice strong enough to fill the ballroom. You abandoned me during childbirth. You abandoned them before taking your first breath as a father, and now the world knows you tried to use them as bargaining chips. Colton's face crumpled. No, Harper, please. She didn't flinch. You made your choices. Now you live with them. Officers seized him. He thrashed, shouted, begged. Harper, don't let them take me. Grayson stepped beside her, speaking quietly, but firmly. You don't have to watch this. But Harper did. She needed to. Because for once, the pain was no longer hers. It was his. As Colton was dragged, screaming from the ballroom, Harper finally exhaled. The weight she had carried for years lifted. The empire he tried to steal stood behind her. Her name was cleared. Her children were safe. And this was only the beginning. The ballroom slowly regained its rhythm after Colton's arrest, but the energy had shifted entirely. The applause had faded, the whispers had quieted, and what remained was a dense, electric silence, a silence thick with shock and respect. Harper Ellington stood at the center of it like the calm after a storm. Her gown still shimmered under the golden chandeliers, but now everyone saw more than elegance. They saw strength, resilience, a woman forged in fire. Grayson offered her a glass of water, not champagne, his voice low. You handled that better than most trained executives. Harper managed a small smile. I didn't handle anything. The truth handled itself. But Grayson shook his head. No, you faced it. That's what leaders do. The praise warmed her, but only for a moment. Because the truth had a price. Across the room, board members approached cautiously, like people nearing a lion that had just discovered its roar. Some congratulated her. Some apologized. Some, like Sterling's faction, kept their eyes glued to the floor, their political futures unraveling in real time. Yet Harper didn't bask in victory. All she could think about was the NICU, her children, their tiny hands, their fragile breaths, their uncertain tomorrow. She wasn't celebrating tonight. Not really. She was surviving. As the crowd thinned, Miranda approached, holding a thick folder. Harper, these are the preliminary filings for Sterling and Lillian. Fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. The DA wants your statement to finalize charges. Harper traced the edge of the folder, her fingers trembling not with fear, but with emotional exhaustion. They'll go to prison? She asked quietly. Miranda nodded. For a very long time. A weight lifted from Harper's chest, yet another settled deeper. Good, she whispered. But this isn't the end, is it? Miranda shook her head. Companies this big don't turn overnight. Sterling wasn't acting alone. There are still people who don't want you on that throne. Harper absorbed that in silence. She had just taken down a conspiracy, exposed public corruption, survived a man who saw her children as bargaining chips, and still her war wasn't over. But something inside her had shifted tonight. She no longer felt like an outsider walking through Ellington Global. She felt like someone stepping into her inheritance with purpose. Not to join the fight, but to finish it. As the gala wound down, Harper stepped out onto the terrace overlooking Central Park. The cool night breeze lifted loose strands of her hair. For the first time all evening, she allowed herself to breathe deeply. She didn't hear Grayson until he was standing beside her. It's beautiful up here, he said softly. It is, she admitted. But it makes me wonder what Eleanor saw from this view. If she wished I had been here with her. Grayson studied her profile, something tender flickering in his eyes. She believed you'd change this place. She believed you'd change lives. Harper let out a shaky laugh. I just survived childbirth and a corporate coup in the same week. I don't feel like someone who changes lives. You already have, Grayson replied. You changed mine. The words hit her chest like a soft, unexpected blow. Warm, dangerous, undeniably sincere. Harper looked away, overwhelmed by emotions she wasn't ready to name, but the moment was cut short when her phone buzzed sharply in her hand. A message from the hospital. We need you to come immediately. It's about baby Miles. Harper's heart plummeted. The night that had given her power was about to test her in the most painful way imaginable. Harper's heels clicked across the marble floor of the plaza as she ran half stumbling, half flying toward the exit. The message from the NICU burned in her mind. "We need you to come immediately. It's about baby Miles." Grayson didn't hesitate. "I'm driving," he said, already guiding her through the crowd. His hand steadied her elbow as they pushed past startled guests. Harper barely registered the murmurs. Her vision tunneled. Miles. Her smallest, her quietest, her most fragile child. She kept seeing his tiny hand, no bigger than her thumb, curled around the tube that kept him breathing. The ride to the hospital was a blur of red traffic lights, honking taxis, and Harper whispering, "Please, please, please," into her hands. Grayson glanced at her between turns, the tightness in his jaw revealing a fear he didn't dare voice. When they arrived, Harper burst through the NICU doors before anyone could stop her. The doctor on call, Dr. Patel, met her instantly. "Harper, come with me." Her stomach dropped. "What happened? Is he breathing? Did something he had a respiratory crash, doctor?" Patel explained gently but urgently. "We stabilized him, but he's struggling more than usual. We're adjusting his oxygen levels, but we need your consent to escalate treatment." Harper froze. Her breath vanished. Escalate. She knew what that meant. "Is he in pain?" Harper whispered. "We're keeping him comfortable," the doctor assured, "but he needs intervention quickly." Harper felt her knees weaken. The room spun, monitors beeping painfully loud. She had survived betrayal, humiliation, corporate warfare, but nothing could compare to the terror of losing her child. Through the glass window, she saw Miles's tiny chest rising unevenly beneath a nest of tubes and wires. His skin looked too pale, his breaths too shallow. Her heart shattered, not cracked, shattered. "I want to see him," she choked out. Dr. Patel nodded, guiding her into the sterile room. When Harper reached the incubator, her tears finally escaped. "Hi, baby," she whispered, placing her fingertips gently against the glass. "Mommy's here. I'm right here." Grayson stood quietly behind her, stepping back enough to give her space, but close enough to catch her if she fell apart. "Harper," he said softly, "whatever you need, whatever choice you make, I'm with you." She didn't answer. Her entire soul was focused on the fragile life inside that incubator. After several minutes, Dr. Patel appeared again. "We need your decision." Harper wiped her face, though her hands trembled violently. "What happens if we don't escalate?" The doctor hesitated. "He may not survive the night." A sound escaped Harper's throat, a broken, wounded plea. Her vision blurred. She felt herself swaying. Grayson caught her arms. "Harper, look at me." She lifted her tear-soaked eyes. "You won't lose him," he said firmly. "Not tonight. Not ever. We'll fight with him." Harper swallowed hard, the decision burning through her. She placed her palm on the incubator, willing her strength into her son. "Do it," she whispered. Her voice cracked but didn't break. "Whatever he needs, do it." Dr. Patel nodded and rushed toward the medical team. Harper leaned her forehead against the glass, whispering prayers through trembling lips. "You're strong, Miles. Stronger than me. Fight, baby. Please fight." Behind her, Grayson tightened his fists helplessly, watching the medical team swarm around the smallest Ellington heir. But then, Miles' monitor spiked. A warning alarm blared. Doctors rushed in. Harper screamed, "Miles!" The alarm shrieked through the NICU like a blade slicing the air. Doctors rushed around baby Miles's incubator, their movements sharp, urgent, synchronized. Tubes were adjusted, oxygen increased, tiny sensors flashing red. Harper's scream echoed, torn from a place deeper than fear itself. "Miles!" Grayson grabbed her before she collapsed, holding her upright as her legs buckled. "Harper, breathe," he whispered desperately, though his own voice fractured. "You have to breathe." But she couldn't. Her lungs refused. Her heart refused. All she could see was her smallest child, his fragile chest barely rising, his eyelids fluttering like the wings of a dying butterfly. Dr. Patel looked up briefly, her voice firm but gentle. "Give us space, please." Harper shook her head violently. "I'm not leaving him." She pushed forward until her hands pressed against the glass of the incubator. "Fight, baby. Stay with me. Please stay with me." The medical team continued their work. Airway suction, oxygen escalation, emergency medication. Seconds felt like hours. Minutes felt like eternity. Harper's world narrowed to the tiny figure inside the incubator. Her son, her miracle, her everything. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, the monitors stabilized. The jagged spikes softened. Beep, beep, beep. Consistent, steady, alive. Dr. Patel exhaled, shoulders sagging in relief. He's responding. His oxygen levels are improving. Harper covered her mouth as sobs tore through her. Thank God. Oh, thank God. Grayson pulled her into his chest, his arms wrapping around her while her body shook with relief. He's a fighter, he murmured into her hair, just like his mother. For the first time since the gala, Harper allowed herself to collapse, not from fear, but from gratitude, so fierce it hurt. An hour later, Harper sat beside Miles's incubator, her fingers resting gently against the glass. Dr. Patel joined her quietly. He's stable now, she said. It'll be a long road, but he's past the worst of tonight's crisis. Harper nodded, tears glistening. Thank you for saving him. Dr. Patel smiled softly. You saved him. Your courage to escalate treatment made all the difference. Courage. Harper let the words settle inside her. For so long, she'd felt like everything happened to her. Tonight proved she was capable of changing the outcome. Not just for Ellington Global. For her children. For herself. When the doctor left, Grayson sat beside her, elbows on his knees, watching Miles sleep under the soft glow of the incubator lights. You were extraordinary, he said gently. Harper shook her head. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Grayson replied. It's choosing to fight anyway. She looked at him, then really looked. The exhaustion in his eyes, the quiet devotion in every action he'd taken, the way he showed up for battles that weren't his. Until now. Her voice trembled. I don't know what I would have done without you tonight. His expression softened with something deep, unspoken. You'll never have to find out. For the first time, Harper didn't look away. Oh, Shuli, for the sin. Her heart opened raw, vulnerable, ready. But before either could speak the words hanging between them, Miranda rushed in, breathless. Harper, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the board has reconvened. She handed Harper a document. They're voting right now on whether you officially become chair of Ellington Global. Harper stood slowly, her gaze shifting from her son to the empire waiting for her decision. Tonight, she almost lost everything, and now she was being asked to claim everything. She wiped her tears, lifted her chin, and whispered to Miles. Watch me, baby. Mommy's going to finish this fight. Harper Ellington walked into the boardroom for the last time, not as a frightened outsider, not as a girl fighting for scraps of respect, but as a woman who had survived every storm thrown at her. The night still clung to her gown, the scent of sterile NICU corridors mixing with the faint perfume from the gala. Her eyes were tired, but her resolve was unshakable. As she pushed open the boardroom doors, 13 executives turned toward her. This time, they didn't look through her. They stood, all of them. Miranda whispered, astonished. They're acknowledging you. Grayson stepped beside Harper, not leading her, not shielding her, simply standing with her. Board member Cho cleared his throat. Miss Ellington, after reviewing all evidence presented, the board has deemed you the sole legitimate heir. Tonight, we are voting on your appointment as chair of Ellington Global. Sterling's former seat sat empty. Lillian's chair had been removed. The corruption that tried to swallow her was gone. Harper took her place at the head of the table. Her grandmother's place, her rightful place. Cho raised his hand. All in favor? Hands lifted around the room, one by one, firm, decisive, unanimous. Harper blinked rapidly as the reality settled over her. Grayson leaned close, whispering, Congratulations, Chairwoman Ellington. The title settled into her bones like it belonged there, because it did, but she didn't smile, not yet, not until she said the words she needed to say. Thank you, Harper began, her voice steady. But leadership is not about power. It's about responsibility. My grandmother believed Ellington Global should reflect integrity, compassion, and service. That begins again tonight. Executives nodded, some wiping their eyes discreetly. I'll be restructuring departments, Harper continued, and implementing new oversight policies to ensure corruption never grows here again. Her voice sharpened. And anyone who attempts to exploit this company or my family will face consequences, legal and permanent. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. The meeting adjourned with applause. In the quiet hallway afterward, Harper leaned against the wall, finally letting the weight lift from her shoulders. Grayson approached, removing his tie, exhaustion softening his sharp features. "You did it," he said gently. "No," Harper whispered. "We did." He hesitated, then took her hands. "Harper, I know tonight was frightening, but watching you fighting for your son, fighting for your family, fighting for your legacy." She looked up at him, tears glistening. "What are you trying to say?" "That I'm proud of you," he said softly. "And I care for you deeply." Her breath caught. She had been hurt so deeply, she didn't trust her heart to speak. But this man had shown up for every battle, every heartbreak, every moment she thought she would break. "Grayson," she whispered, "I don't know if I'm ready for anything except being a mother and learning who I am again." He smiled gently. "Then let me stand beside you while you figure it out." Harper exhaled, warmth blooming through her chest. "Yes," she murmured. "I want that too." Weeks later, the triplets finally came home, tiny, healthy, breathing on their own. Harper cried as she held all three, her heart finally whole. Grayson was there, quietly assembling cribs in the nursery, humming as the babies slept. Life didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt possible, hopeful, new. And on a quiet spring evening in a small ceremony at the Hamptons, attended only by close friends and staff who had become family, Harper and Grayson exchanged vows beneath soft golden lights. Harper stood beside the ocean with the man who had never tried to control her, rescue her, or stand above her. He simply walked beside her steady, loyal, and proud of the woman she had become. As the waves moved gently behind them, he kissed her beneath the fading light. Harper closed her eyes and rested against him. "I finally have the life I deserved," she whispered. Her triplets were healthy and safe. The empire she had rebuilt was secure. Colton had faced the consequences of abandoning his family, and every person who once underestimated Harper had watched her rise beyond their reach. But her greatest victory was not the company, the wealth, or even the justice she received. It was peace. There were no hospital alarms, no divorce papers waiting on her bed, and no fear that someone would leave when life became difficult. Her children would grow up surrounded by love, and Harper would never again confuse suffering with loyalty. Everything meant to break her had revealed what was already inside her: courage, intelligence, and the strength to build a future from the ruins of betrayal. She had entered motherhood abandoned and terrified. She stepped into her future, loved, powerful, and completely free. With her children safe, her heart healed, and a true partner beside her, Harper Ellington finally claimed the life she had fought so hard to earn.